everyone, what's going on? This is Jake Simpson for FullMoonVFX.net, and I'm here with an awesome tutorial mainly for beginners. Now in this tutorial I will be showing you how to create text on a gradient background with some soft shadows, but my main focus is going to be on showing beginners sort of the After Effects interface. So let's get started. Now when you first open up After Effects, you're not going to have anything here. You'll just have a blank interface. So how you'll get started is you can either go up here to Composition and click New Composition, or you can click on this little icon down here. So that'll open up this. And this is how you decide what speed your video is going to play at, the dimensions and all of that. But you don't really need to worry about that right now. I would just set it to 1280 by 720, and any duration is good. I have it at 4 seconds, so that'll be fine. And I hit OK. So then you will have this window here, and this is where you are going to do the majority of your work in After Effects. Down here is your timeline, and this will show what part of your footage you're looking at. It's sort of like the time selector on a YouTube video. So to get started, we're going to create a new solid. So how you can do that is you can right click, New Solid, or you can go up here and click Layer, New, and click Solid. And then I'm just going to stick with this blue color right here. Okay. Make sure it's comp size by clicking that and hit OK. So now you have a solid, and this is the only layer that you have in your composition. So right here you can see all of the different layers that you have. So the first thing I'm going to do after creating this is create a new adjustment layer. Now this adjustment layer you can't see because it's a clear layer. It only affects everything that's below it. So I'm going to do Effect, Color Correction, Curves. Now this tool you can use to alter colors and to change the brightness of something. So I'm just going to bring this down a bit, maybe to here. But we don't want the entire background to be this dark color. We want it sort of like this where it fades on. So how we'll do that is click on the adjustment layer and then go up here. Yours will probably be set on the rectangle tool. So you can click and hold this icon and then click on the ellipse tool. Now what this does is it will draw what's called a mask around this layer, which is showing where this layer is showing through to the layers below it or around it and just in your composition. So I'm going to click here in the middle and drag out. But as you see, the mask follows where my mouse goes, and we don't want that. So you can hold Command on your keyboard or Control if you're on the Windows, and you just kind of want to size this so that the lines go a bit outside of your frame. And then you can unclick the mouse, and there you have a mask. Now to go back to the normal mouse tool, you can click this icon up here, or you can hit V on your keyboard. That will bring you back to this selection tool. So now that we have this mask, it's covering the inside, which we don't want. We want to invert it. So how we can do that is you can click on your adjustment layer, whichever one has the mask, and hit M on your keyboard. That will bring up your mask properties. So over here you have something that says Add. That means that everything inside the mask will be shown. We can invert that by clicking this and changing it to Subtract. Now everything on the outside is what's being shown, but it has a really hard edge, and we don't want that either. So to change that, you can click on the adjustment layer or the mask and hit F on your keyboard. That will bring up what's called a feather, and the feather just sort of smooths out your edges. Now if it gets annoying seeing your mask here, you can click on this little icon to hide your mask. It'll still be there, but you just won't see it on screen. That's good if you're feathering a mask, because then you can see the outlines. So I'm going to bring this value way up to around 400. So now what that does is it just smooths the outline. And this eyeball tool, you can turn on or off a layer so that you can see it or hide it if you would like. So now you can see that looks a lot better. Except I don't want the edges to be a dark blue. I sort of want it to fade color-wise as well. So to do that, we can go to Effect, Color Correction, Tint. Now what this does is it just dulls the color. It completely tints the color. So we'll bring this amount to tint down, and that just reduces how much it's tinting. I'll bring it down to around 38. So now, if you turn this effect on and off, you can see it just sort of fades the colors on the outline. Now the next thing we need to do is create our text, which is what's going to be the center. So to do that, you can right click, do New Text, or you can hit T on your keyboard, and that gives you, you can click on the text tool here, or do Command or Control T on your keyboard. Now we can click in the center here, and that will give us an area that we can type. So I'm just going to type shadows. And then you can click away down here. And then hit V on your keyboard to go back to your mouse tool. So as you can see, the text is really small. You can change this by double clicking the text and going over here to your text size, and you can change it here, or you can scale the layer up. To do that, deselect it so that you're not typing. Hit V on your keyboard to go back to your mouse tool. Then you can either click on the layer here, or you can click on it down here in your timeline. After that, you can hit S on your keyboard. That will bring out the scale. So under the scale for your text, you'll want to increase this, maybe to 270-ish %. So now that we have this new text, I kind of want it centered. So to do that, you can click on this little icon and then click on the title action safe. What that does is just shows you where the center in your composition is. You can use the mouse wheel to zoom in or zoom out, and then you just sort of want to align this text with the center. Then you can zoom out again. And if you want to move side to side, you can press and hold the space bar on your keyboard and then click and drag. Now if you want to remove your title action safe, you can just click back down here and click on title action safe. Now that'll remove that. Now that we have our text, we're going to do something called pre-composing. So we'll click on our text layer here, go to Layer, Pre-Compose, and then make sure that it's checked on Move All Attributes, and we'll just name this Text. And then hit OK. So what this does is makes this one layer, and everything that's inside of this composition will now show up in this composition as one solid single layer. So if I took this and did Command or Control D to duplicate it, we can drag it around our other layer, and you see that we have two layers here, but when we go back into this composition, both show up, but it's only underneath this layer. So you can double click on that to go in the comp. But I'm going to delete this so that we only have this one, and go back to this comp. Now to add the shadows, we're going to add several effects. But first we're going to duplicate our pre-composed layer. So Command or Control D to duplicate, and then you have two separate layers. Now I'm going to click on the bottom one and go over here to Effects and Presets, and then type in Fill. Then I'm going to drag this effect down onto the text layer. And then in the effect controls here, you'll see that you have the effect. But right now it's set to red. So if I turn off the layer that's above it, you can see that the text is red. We want it to be black since it will be a shadow. So we'll click in here at the color and change this down to a black. Now that it's black, we can use this as our shadow. So we can turn on the layer above it and click on our shadow layer and then hit enter on the keyboard if you want to rename it. I'm going to rename it shadow. Once that layer is renamed, you have that below your text. So now we're going to add something called a radial fast blur. So you can just type in radial fast, and then there's radial fast blur. We can drag this down onto our shadow layer, and you'll have this. So now, as you can see, it's sort of blurring outwards, which we don't want. We want it to be going down as if it's a shadow. So I'm going to drag this down, and I'm going to click on the center, this target here, and I'm going to select up here. You can also take this and you can move it around to show where a simulated light sort of would be coming from. So now when you go back down here, you can see you have more of a shadow. Except around the edges, it doesn't really look so much like a shadow. So we're going to add one more effect, but we're going to add it to the text layer up here. This effect is called a drop shadow. So we can just type in drop shadow, and then we can drag this onto our text layer. So what this does, if you turn off the shadow that you have, you can see it just adds this little shadow around it. And up here, you can change the direction of it. And so we sort of want it to go down in this direction. And then here, it's the distance. You can change the distance the shadow is. I'm going to set this to a very low value, such as maybe 3 or 4. And then the softness, that just sort of blurs the shadow out. So I'm going to blur it maybe 24 pixels. So that just gives the text a little bit of a dark outside. And if you turn this effect on and off, you can see what it's doing. You can also change the opacity here to make it darker or less visible. I'm going to leave this at 50. By the way, if you do an effect that you don't like, you can always hit Control or Command Z on the keyboard, and that will undo the last thing that you did. Now we can turn our shadow back on, and there you go. Now you have a text with a shadow. If you think that your shadow is too dark, like in my example, it's a bit brighter, you can change the opacity of the layer itself. So you can click on the layer, hit T on the keyboard, or you can click on this arrow here to bring it down, and you can change the transform menu here. Find opacity, and you can bring this percentage down. 100 means that it is fully visible, and 0 means it is invisible. So you can select whatever value you want. I'm going to leave it around 42. So that looks pretty good. Now you have text with shadows. And now if you want to change your text, you can just click on your text layer or double click here on your text, and then you have your text here that you can change. Just double click on the layer here or up here, and you can type anything you want. I'm going to type in full moon, and then click away from it to deselect it, but you'll still have this tool, so you can hit V to go back to the pointer tool. Then once you go back in your other comp, it will be changed to the new text with the new shadows. And you can do this for whatever you want. And anything that you put in this text composition now will have a shadow in this composition. So if I created a new solid, just hit OK. I have this blue solid, but if I want, I can select the pen tool here or hit G on the keyboard. Make sure this layer is selected, and then you can draw a shape out if you want. I'm just going to draw sort of this blob and then link it. And now I have this. So I can click on the layer itself to move it around, or I can click on the little dots of the mask so I can realign the mask and move it around. Now these are bevels, or not bevels, they make the lines more rounded and smooth rather than harsh and jagged. So you can play with those. Now that I have this shape in this composition, if I go back to comp 2, that shape is here, and it also has the same shadow properties because it is inside this layer. If I made the new solid here and did the same thing, hit G on my keyboard and just drew out a shape, it would not have the shadows because it is not inside this layer which has the shadows applied to it. So if you ever want an effect to be applied to multiple layers, put it in the same composition, or you can put the adjustment layers over it and it will affect everything underneath it. So right now you can see that the adjustment layer is also darkening our shape. If you don't want that, you can just put the adjustment layer below our shape. Alright, so I hope you've enjoyed this beginner's tutorial. I will definitely be doing more of these. You can feel free to leave a comment on this video, and definitely check out the website, fullmoonvfx.net. It is a new website, but hopefully there are enough exciting things on there. You can just click on the tutorial section and you can watch all of the other tutorials that I have posted. I will also be posting the link to this project file under the video on the website fullmoonvfx.net. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. I forgot about one more thing in the tutorial that I thought I would just quickly cover for everyone who's new to After Effects. If ever you make a picture or a video and you want to save it as a picture or video, what you can do next is, first, if you're making a picture, for example, you want to drag this work area to be one frame. That means that only one frame of this will be saved as a picture. And if you're making a picture, you'll only want one. You won't want duplicates of the same thing. So you can either drag this or hit N on your keyboard to bring the end one, or if you're forward some, you can hit B to bring the beginning part. You can think of it as B for beginning and N for end. So then once you have your one frame selected, and this is the composition that you want to save as a picture, you can go up here to Composition and then click on Add to Render Queue. Once you click that, you'll get these settings here. Don't worry about render settings. You only need to worry about output module and output 2. For output module, click that, and if you want it as an image, just change the format here to JPEG. And then I'm going to set the quality on maximum and then hit OK. If you want it to have a transparent background, then just change this from JPEG to PNG. And then change channels from RGB to RGB plus alpha. That means that your image will have a transparent background. For example, if I did not have the background in here, you can click on this to see the transparency grid. So this means that the background would be transparent, and I could put this image over anything else and it would show up like this, minus the checkerboard. It means I can put anything behind it. But I don't want that and this. Since we have a background, I'm just going to set it to RGB and change this to a JPEG. And you can hit OK. And then on the output 2, click on that and save that to wherever you want it to be saved, and then rename it. I'm going to rename this Text Shadow. And then you want to uncheck Save in Subfolder. What that'll do is just create a new folder in this directory. So right now it's set to go to my desktop. If I had it checked Save in Subfolder, it would create a new folder named Comp2. But I don't want that, so I'm just going to hit Save and then click Render over here. And then it will be saved as an image.